Now, back to work. Mhm. Thesis proposal. I suppose I should. All right, close. Mhm. Match, match, edit. Mhm. All right, open reason. No, not this one. Oops. Ah, it's tasty. Open reason. Presentation notes. So let's start. I don't know if I can do this under if I can. Look like it. Oh well. So thesis proposal. So as I kind of talked about in the paper, well, I talked about all this in the paper, but a lot of progress, this 809, a lot of progress has been made in research and engineering that focuses on the mechanics of flying, swimming, and locomotion over land, which has led to many useful applications and has furthered our understanding of the mechanics of these types of locomotion. But the locomotion through granular media is still poorly understood, as are the mechanics of tunnel formation, and really few burrowing machines exist for practical application that match the performance of live organisms. A better understanding of these things within granular media can be relevant to a wide variety of fields, including construction, resource extraction, interplanetary exploration, and search and rescue. Um, Now, that's slide one. Okay. And working towards this goal, bio-inspired designs have been explored based on a variety of species that inhabit and successfully move through subterranean environments. However, subterranean locomotion through granular media is a challenging area of study. Mechanics are still being explored, and the underlying mathematics are not fully understood. Okay. And while a lot of useful work is being done to deepen our understanding of the subject, research has more often focused on dry granular media than damp. This is an important difference because the mechanics can be quite different depending on the moisture content. Capillary effects and surface tension mean that the addition of water to the granular substrate will increase the cohesion between the grains, although this only happens to a point. When media becomes saturated, it enters a slurry state, and capillary action no longer holds the grains together. I need to work on this. So this would be slide 3. I can do this. This would be slide 3. Slide 3. Difference is an important one because the mechanics can be quite different depending on the moisture content. Dry sand can be made to flow when a force is applied. Where is this? Dry sand. Okay, so let's take this up here. Capillary effects, dry blah blah blah, saturated slurry state, penetration resistance, locomotors are unable to use. Okay. So let's move this. Dry sand should be up here to about the first. The difference is an important one because the mechanics can be quite different depending on the moisture content. Dry sand can be made to flow when a force is applied, which allows some organisms to adopt strategies analogous for those that move through a low Reynolds number fluid. Capillary effects and surface tension mean the addition of water to a granular substrate will increase the cohesion between the grains, although this only occurs to a point. Will begin to increase cohesion between the grains. Let's see. Capillary effects and surface tension increase cohesion between grains. Damp granular media shows plasticity and increase in shear strength and history dependence. As a result of the increase in moisture, well, as a result of the moisture content. Saturated media enters a slurry state and capillary action will no longer hold the grains together. Overall, penetration resistance decreases with an increase in moisture content in cohesive soils. So locomotors moving through damp granular media are therefore unable to use some of the strategies employed by those in dry granular media, while the cohesiveness of the substrate means the grains are deformed into tunnels or burrows that will stay in place once they're created. The lack of research involving damp granular media may be due in part to the experimental challenges that damp granular media presents, especially in regards to numerical approximations and the preparation of repeatable trials. Um, for dry granular media, you have nice things like resistive force theory that can be used for getting numerical approximations of the forces of things moving through the media. And here the object in question is theoretically divided into infinitesimal segments, and the thrust and drag experienced by each segment can be summed to approximate the forces acting on the locomotor as a whole, which is what this diagram is showing here. So it has this infinitesimal segment, ds, they have it labeled as, but then you've got the force in, so it's got the normal force, it's got the, um, hmm, well, anyway, it has the different forces acting on it. Hmm, yeah, anyway. Now this works in dry media. I wonder if I should works in dry media because movement through Dry grains, which lack the cohesion of damp granular media, is not history dependent. In other words, the forces experienced are not changed by past movement through a given location. Therefore, behavior of one segment does not affect the forces acting on the following segments, although it should be noted that this is not true at the surface. Therefore, an undulating body or a rotating head can thus be approximated through the integration of forces across all segments if movement is taking place at a sufficient depth below the surface. Let's see. So slide 3, so slide moisture content, slide 3 up to penetration. This is slide 4. We need 5. For example, the mechanics of locomotion, blah, blah, blah. We talk about this. The addition of water to a granular media leads to cohesion between particles. Okay, so this is slide. What slide is this anyway? 6. The addition of water. The addition of water to granular media leads to cohesion between particles, resulting in a history dependence that influences the forces encountered during locomotion through the media. For example, trailing segments will encounter the surrounding media in a different way depending on the movement of the leading segment. Slide 7. Back the hoses, it's 7. From a logistical standpoint, it is also difficult to prepare repeatable laboratory trials for testing damp granular media. Technologies such as fluidized airbeds are immense help in performing repeated experiments involving locomotors in dry media because the testing area can automatically be reset after each trial. However, this method cannot be used for damp granular media due to the media's inability to fluidize in this way. Methods to deposit homogeneous batches of media have been developed, C. Sharp et al. 2015, but these methods still require the testing area to be emptied and refilled in preparation for each individual trial. So that means replicates and all. You've got 5 replicates for one trial. Every single one of those, you have to dig it out and bury it again. This results in a labor-intensive and time-consuming process. Despite these challenges, damp granular media is not only a common substrate for terrestrial locomotion, it's more commonly encountered in terrestrial habitats than in dry granular media. Do slide 7, blah, blah, blah. content, time-consuming process. Slide 8. Despite the challenges, granular media is not only a common substrate for terrestrial locomotion, it is in fact more commonly encountered in terrestrial habitats than dry granular media. And while the methods developed for dry granular media make it an attractive media for laboratory study, the different mechanics mean that the results of experiments involving dry media cannot be assumed to relate to locomotion through damp. As a result, locomotion through damp granular media remains an open and attractive area for academic research. One, in fact, that we shall be looking at in this thesis. Slide 9. To explore the role that these different strategies play in locomotion, the head kinematic strategies used by limbless squamate betta whales will be examined in this thesis. Okay, let's see, this is slide 9. Organisms that move through granular media show a diversity of kinematic strategies even among those of similar body plants inhabiting similar substrates. Species belonging to the clade Amphisbaenia will be a particular focus in this thesis. Being as they are underrepresented in literature, which is owing in part to their elusive nature and difficulty of keeping them alive in captivity. Moreover, Amphisbaenians are very successful in moving through compact soils, invading niches that are inaccessible for other reptiles, making them an attractive model for bio-inspired engineering. Oops. Animals being underrepresented in the literature. These animals being underrepresented in the literature. So this is slide. Hmm. Amphisbaenia, underrepresented literature. Amphisbaenians are very successful in moving through compact soils, blah, blah, just said that making attractive model for bio-inspired engineering. Further distinctive head geometries and relative simplicity of movement are advantages in constructing robophysical models. Slide 11. Amphisbaenians are generally found in moist substrates. Carl Gann suggested that this was related to the water permeability of their skin. He also hypothesized this was related in part to the ability of these moist substrates to be formed into tunnels, which, once having formed a tunnel, the energy to required movement underground is greatly decreased, as is the energy required simply to breathe, not having to push against the surrounding substrate in order to do so. Slide Amphibians appear to have developed several adaptations to aid in subterranean locomotion. This includes elongation and robust call. Adaptations that are often associated with fossoriality in other organisms as well. Additionally, the amphibians have developed distinct kinematic strategies to aid in locomotion and tunnel formation. Interestingly, these kinematic strategies appear to be correlated to specific skull shapes, resulting in four patterns: one generalized and three specialized. Slide 13. The first and most widely distributed pattern is associated with a generalized rounded or bullet-shaped skull. This pattern, okay, slide 13, yeah. This pattern involves an irregular repetition of apparently random movements in which the head either moves during penetration or intermittently between the forward pushes. Slide 14. The second pattern involves a corkscrew type of motion that combines rotational twists with a simultaneous forward penetration movement. This is correlated with sharp edges on either side of the snout, which shave off material from the surrounding media as the animal moves. This pattern morphology combination seems to be advantageous in sand and sandy soils, allowing for rapid burial in hot, dry environments to be able to access cooler and moister substrates. This pattern is mostly found among members of the family Tragonophidae, which inhabit the sandy soils in North Africa and the Arabian Peninsula. Slide. The third pattern involves the side-to-side rotation of the head in conjunction with the forward penetration movement. In this case, the skull is flattened laterally so that the head resembles a wedge shape. I don't know where we are, slide 16. Fourth pattern of morphology and kinematic strategy is the shovel-snouted type of Anaspanian, which rams a dorsally flattened shovel-like head into substrate and then lifts it to pack the media into the ceiling, simultaneously flattening the floor with its ventral side. The keel and shovel-snouted types are found in more compact and deeper soils than the Trogonophids or Amphispanians, the more generalized morphologies and kinematics. Meanwhile, there is some distinctions in terms of geographic separations as well. Trogonophids, shovel-snouted amphispanians, and keel-snouted amphispanians are generally not found in the same geographical areas, whereas the range of the generalized types can overlap with any of the three others. Any of the three others. Slide. Slide 17. Oops. So Carl Gann suggests the decoupling of the head oscillation. The forward penetration results in an increased mechanical efficiency for burrowing. He has also pointed out that the intermittent ramming motions, as opposed to a single continuous push, should theoretically be advantageous due simply to physics, the fact that a force applied to substrate is going to be directly proportional to its acceleration. So therefore, if you can have a bunch of bursts of higher acceleration instead of one push where you're accelerating and then going at the same speed, you should be able to have higher force overall than one continuous push. And he likens that to the kind of way the pile driver works. And hence the picture of a pile driver on the right. Bam, 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 instead of bam, which would be really difficult. Be like trying to push a nail in just by swinging the hammer once. And it's, well, that's a long story. There is a way you can do that, but without a hammer. If you have a 2x4, you can actually set the nail up on a concrete block so the sharp point is sticking up. You take the 2x4 and you just swing it down with one big swing, and the nail will go right through the 2x4. So in one blow, you can drive a nail through a 2x4 without using a hammer. Anyway, I've seen it done. That didn't have much to do with this. Well, it probably does in some way. I mean, things penetrating other things. I mean, these physical things can be generalized, I suppose. Okay, so this was slide 17. Slide 18. A movie. Slide. So this is still slide 17, actually. Both of these suggestions are, however, hypothetical, as there is a lack of published data comparing strategies. Published data are also lacking concerning the reductions in force correlated to the head oscillation patterns during locomotion through wet granular media. An exception to this is an experimental study conducted by Sharp et al. In 2015, probably 2014, published in 2015 by the Goldman Lab here, in which observation of the burrowing behavior of an oscillated skink prompted a mechanical simulation that looked at drag forces following the rotation of the cylindrical rod. So if you see this video here, which you don't on YouTube because this is all just practice stuff, but you can look it up probably if you type in oscillated skink burrowing, Sharp, SHARPE, et al. 2015, or Goldman Lab oscillated skink burrowing. You can probably find this video. Anyway, an exception is an experimental study conducted by Sharp et al. In 2015, in which observation of the burrowing behavior of the oscillated skink prompted a mechanical. I just said that. Oscillated skinks employ this side-to-side head rotation, which is simultaneous with forward penetration. One hypothesis for this behavior is that it weakens the resistance of the media and thereby decreases the forces needed to penetrate. Slide 19. An exception is an experimental study, in which involving, how about that, involving observation of the burrowing behavior of the oscillated skink. And then later down here, we can say this prompted okay, slide 19. A mechanical simulation that looked at drag forces following the rotation of a cylindrical rod. They found that a side-to-side rotation coupled from forward penetration lowered the drag force experienced by a cylindrical intruder, although this advantage was transient and disappeared after about 4 centimeters. Still, published experiments have been lacking that look at the relationship between repeated head rotation during penetration and the overall forces required, as opposed to just this penetration, uh, move, penetrate. Slide 20. My preliminary research has indicated that the transient advantage found by Sharp et al. Continues if the head movement is repeated and not decoupled from penetration. The energy advantage seems to depend on the number of head rotations relative to the forward penetration, but less so on the amplitude of rotation, at least beyond a certain point. As rotating the head more often and at a higher amplitude incurs a greater cost of energy, this implies that there may be optima for these variables outside of which efficiency is lost. Descriptions of these preliminary results will be covered in more detail in the relevant proposal chapters. Slide 21. The forces involved with burrowing are much higher than other forms of locomotion, and the energy cost associated with this means of locomotion is higher than any other. As this is the case, it would make sense that burrowing should lead to selective pressures that drive the morphological evolution of burrowing organisms. Indeed, burrowing organisms tend to share some common traits with convergent evolution, appearing to favor a narrow, elongated body shape, a reduction of the limbs, and a decrease in size. Slide 22. Resistive forces may drive head shape as well, as geometry plays a role in the forces required for penetration. Experimentation has shown that narrow and generally more conical shapes experience less resistance to penetration than other shapes with wider diameters. This is somewhat complicated by other selective pressures, such as feeding, that may constrain the head shape of burrowing organisms. Moreover, organisms with different head shapes can adopt different strategies of head movement during locomotion, which likely changes the effects that any specific head shape will have on the forces experienced by the locomotor. And this would in turn lead to differences in the optimal head geometry for a burrower based on behavior. Slide everyone. Slide 23. Oops. I'm going to have to, actually, I need to take off, go elsewhere for now, so we shall take a break here. Farewell.